1:1.
Sure.
Who was it that was talking?
Thank you. Technology. I'm glad I don't know anything about it. I think of the early 60s, and maybe some of you might remember this, the tremendous conferences they would have here. And I would go every year, and I wrote down some of the names. I remember one particular conference. This place was packed. They had John Smart, Alfred P. Gibbs, James Dunn, and Peter Pell in one conference. And I was saved through the ministry of Pine Bush Bible Camp, but my parents wouldn't let me leave until I was about 16 or 17. And it was a liberal Presbyterian church. I don't know what they said, but I don't remember one word. But I remember coming to these conferences and thinking, these guys must be like the apostles, hearing them preach, and they knew their Bibles inside out, upside down. It was quite a contrast. Well, take your Bibles now, since we're talking about the word of the Lord. Let's look at Philippians 1:1. We'll just very quickly move through that. And Peter, no one has told me when I should end. You have a suggestion? 8:30.
Well, we're already past that. We didn't change the clock.
Yep.
Go to 9.
And now we'll close in prayer, please. We'll go to what? Okay, yes. Don't turn around. Don't anyone turn around. It's a big man coming here, stepping in. Hi, Phil.
How you doing, Alex? It's
I'm
nice to see you. Welcome.
Yes. Philippians 1:1. Paul and Timothy, servants, or actually slaves of Christ Jesus, to all, notice the word all the saints in Christ Jesus who are at Philippi with, or along with, the overseers and deacons. This is our first introduction to these two offices in the church. Here is something very interesting. After he acknowledges the overseers and deacons, or assistants, I think would be an actual translation. This is a transliteration. It winds up meaning nothing. Everyone's got their own idea what deacon is. He never brings them up again. The whole rest of the letter, like all of Paul's letters to the churches, is to the church people. Everyone is responsible in the local assembly. Isn't that interesting? It's the one anothering. Every member is responsible for every other member, for praying for one another, caring for one another. It's the one another community. Just real quickly, without getting sidetracked, the doctrine of the body of Christ is one of the most interesting doctrines and very, very practical. Think of this. On the day of Pentecost, the Holy Spirit comes down from heaven and indwells every member, not just the leaders, every member. In fact, it's the distinguishing mark of the Christian church. Every member indwelt by God the Holy Spirit. Every member indwelt by the Holy Spirit, every member gifted to minister to one another. But every member connected together is connected to the head in heaven. No one's connected to the head in heaven alone. We're connected to the head of the church together. Do not miss that. This wonderful doctrine that every single member of Christ's body has a ministry to one another, and we actually minister Christ to one another when we serve one another. Isn't that interesting? And as we serve one another, we're serving Christ. Matthew 25 says that clearly. If you give a cup of cold water, you're in prison, you're hungry, you need clothing. Well, when you do that to someone, you're doing it to one of the Lord's least of the brethren. This is an amazing doctrine. It's not in the Old Testament. Paul is the great revealer of the doctrine of the Church of Jesus Christ. So we have to keep that in mind when we talk about elders and deacons. They are brothers in the assembly to give leadership and guidance and protection to the assembly, but every member is to be ministering one to another. And when the body does not function, it is not healthy as it should be. A healthy body has every single member ministering one to another. So here's a perfect example. There were leaders in the church, recognized leaders, but he talks to the whole congregation. Everyone's responsible for the problems there. Now let's turn over to 1 Timothy chapter 3. 1 Timothy chapter 3, verse 1. The saying is trustworthy. If anyone aspires to the office of overseer or overseership, he desires a noble task. So this is a commendation for the desire to be an overseer, which, as we'll see later, is another term for the same office, elder. It's a good thing. This is not a bad thing. Now, people can have wrong motives, but he is encouraging anyone who will help in the oversight of a local church. You know, I always put it this way. When a person becomes an elder, they've just taken on a part-time job. They may have a full-time job, but you now have a part-time job. It's a heavy, heavy responsibility. And there are intangibles to this job. There are things you cannot explain. You go home at night and there's the sins of the believers, there's the conflict of the believers, and there's these problems, and you carry them with you all the time. I cannot explain it. It's just part of the job. And when you leave that job, a lot of those things are off your shoulder on other people, but they need your prayers. That they need. In fact, I always say to people, you want to complain about your elders or you want to put them down on your prayer list. They need your prayers. Therefore, an overseer, you see, you've got desire, but desire is not enough. You can have the desire, but you must have the qualifications. You must fit the office. And so he immediately says, therefore, an overseer must be above reproach, overarching qualification, husband of one wife, sober-minded. That's a very important qualification. It's a balanced, sober person who's not given to extremes, sound-minded, self-control. That qualification is repeated actually about 4 times. Respectable. People don't follow you if you're not a person that can be respected. Hospitable. That's often eliminated from most people's lives. It's a shame. It's one of the great jewels of the Christian faith, hospitality. Able to teach. Now that'll be the real difference between elders and deacons. Not a drunkard, not a violent, but gentle. Oh, that's one of the most beautiful qualifications. Gentle, magnanimous, amendable, patient, forbearing, not quarrelsome. That'll cause a lot of problems. Not a lover of money. He must manage his own household well with all dignity, keeping his children submissive. For if someone does not know how to manage his own household, how can he care for God's church? That's what elders do. They care for. It's a very a tender word, by the way, used of the Good Samaritan. He must not be a recent convert. He'll get in a lot of trouble. Or he may become puffed up with conceit and fall into the condemnation of the devil, which is probably something to do with his pride. Moreover, he must be well thought of by outsiders so that he may not fall into disgrace, into a snare of the devil. Isn't that interesting? Twice the devil is mentioned in line with the overseers. So in other words, if you don't have the right people, it's just a matter of time for the devil will trip the person up. Now, in this context of the overseer, deacons likewise. Now you're asking a lot of questions about deacons. Well, the one thing that we have no question about is this, and Paul is most clear about this one issue. They must meet these qualifications. No question about that. Deacons likewise must be dignified, not double-tongued, not addicted to much wine, not greedy for dishonest gain. They must hold the mystery of the faith with a clear conscience. Now, verse 10 is often eliminated from this discussion, but do not eliminate this verse. And let them also, like the overseers, be tested first. I don't know what your translation has. Mine has tested. But a good translation of this word is examined. Examined. Let them also be examined. Notice the order. First, then let them serve as deacons if they prove themselves blameless. In other words, no one should be a deacon, no one should be an elder who has not been publicly examined as to the qualifications. What good are the qualifications if there's no examination of the person's life? Do you match these qualifications? And yet this is where many, many churches fail. You know how you become a deacon and elder? Saturday night, you get a phone call. Hello, Bob, how you doing? Good. Hey, we were thinking about you. Maybe you'd like to join the elders. Well, let me ask Mary. Mary, they want me to join the elders. Oh, sure. All my lady friends there and the husbands are elders. Okay, I'll join the elders. That's not a joke. That happens. No one examines their doctrine. Then they wonder why they have problems later. No one examines their life or the qualifications. Do they meet God's qualifications? And when you don't do that and you get the wrong people, you have years and years and years of problems. So this is a biblical teaching. Deacons must be publicly examined as to their fitness for office. Now keep that in mind when you ask, what's the difference between a deacon and just a general servant? Well, this person's in an office and they have to be examined and they have to meet certain requirements. To run the sound system, you do not have to read all these requirements. Their wives likewise, and I like the translation wives, and if you want to talk about that, I'll show you exactly why I think he's talking about wives and not deaconesses, word not even in the Bible, must be dignified, not slanderous, but sober-minded, faithful in all things. Let deacons each be the husband of one wife, managing their children and their own households well. For those who serve well as deacons gain a good standing for themselves and also great confidence in the faith. The key to deacons is their association with the overseers. They're always second. And very similar qualifications to the elders, except they are not required to teach. Turn over real quickly to Titus chapter 1. Titus chapter 1. Amazing little book, Titus. Titus chapter 1, look at verse 9, sort of the crown of the qualifications here. He must hold firm to the trustworthy word as taught by the apostles. In other words, apostolic, orthodox, historical doctrine. So that, two things, he may be able to give instruction in sound doctrine and also to rebuke those who contradict it. And what follows is dealing with false teachers. Notice this qualification elaborates on the 1 Timothy 3 passage, able to teach. This one makes very clear. He must be able to give instruction in sound doctrine, and he must be able to spot false teachers and fight back. That's the big difference between elders and deacons. Elders, overseers, are involved in the teaching ministry, the feeding ministry of the church. They must meet this qualification, or they don't qualify. Deacon does not have to do that. Now, one of the things that will get you in a lot of trouble in a church is to try to change the structure of a church. Many churches have a constitution, and when you go there and you say, well, the constitution should be changed, it's like trying to change the Constitution of the United States of America. People aren't real happy with you if you do that. When you try to change or improve or become more scriptural, you'll find out it's a very, very hard job. People don't give up power easily. They don't give up their particular area of responsibility easily. So if you're going to make changes in elders and deacons, just prepare for the fact that it's not going to be easy. And that's why I have given out thousands and thousands, Peter, many thousands, maybe tens of thousands of the book, Agape Leadership, The Wonderful Life of Robert Chapman. How many have read that book? The rest of you can stand up and leave right now. Phil, have you not read Agape Leadership, Robert Chapman? Oh boy. I forgive you for all that you've done wrong. Oh, I'm going to get that to you. I'm going to get everyone a copy. The Wonderful Life of Mr. Robert Chapman, the Apostle of Love, he was called, and how he changed the little Baptist church that had gone through 3 pastors in 18 months. He was sure to be the 4th pastor, but through his gentleness, his humility, the incredible love of this man and teaching the Bible, how he turned this little Baptist church around. and it became a world-known church. You maybe have heard the wonderful story of this woman in America wanted to write Mr. Chapman. She didn't know the address, so she wrote on the letterhead to show you how well known he was in England, Robert Chapman, University of Love. And that letter got to him in Barnstaple, England. An amazing, amazing life. Well, that's the kind of person you have to be to change a church. And by the way, every church needs to constantly improve. All of us can improve in every area. But the area we want to improve is being a New Testament church and church order. And that is why, and just turn back to 1 Timothy 3. Paul is writing this letter, 1 Timothy 3, verse 14. I hope to come to you soon, but I am writing these things to you. If I delay, might say it's good he did delay, you may know how one ought to behave in the household of God, which is the church of the living God, a pillar and buttress of the truth. So this letter is to help us arrange ourselves in the household of God. Men, women, older ones, younger ones, elders, deacons, children, slaves, all these social groups. This letter is telling them this is how you're supposed to live together and order yourself one to another. Our desire should always be to follow the household order that the apostle gives to us. Remember, Paul is the great apostle of the church, of the mystery of the body of Christ, especially revealed to him is this truth. Well, if that's true, that he's the great teacher of the Gentiles, as he says in chapter 2, then he's telling us how to order the Lord's house. This is not just someone's opinion. What works best? No, this is Christ's chosen apostle teaching us what the Gentiles should know. So I just want to say, if you want to make changes in elders or deacons, it usually comes with a price. Change normally doesn't happen unless there are change agents, and they should be among the elders and deacons, but many times it's not. The eldership may be very weak in leadership, but it could be someone else in the church who says, we need to be more scriptural. We need to make these changes. Normally, if there isn't someone pushing these things, being persistent in it, and calling people to come back to the Bible, normally things don't happen. So I've been to churches. I would think of one church, I've been to it 4 or 5 times over many, many years. And people after would come up and say, Alex, why do you come back here? You give this teaching, nothing ever changes. Nothing ever changes. You're wasting your time. That's because there's no change agent. In other words, you need someone with some leadership ability, and that is a spiritual gift. Turn to Romans chapter 12 real quickly. We don't have enough time because I've got to be done. Well, now it says at 9:30, but we know it's 8:30. That's all right. My alarm clock went off at the wrong time the other morning. And my wife said, what is your clock going off for? I said, oh, I forgot to change it. So I've made the same mistake. We're all human. All right, verse 8. Look at verse 8. Verse 8. The one who exhorts in his exhortation, the one who contributes in generosity, the one who leads, that's a spiritual gift. It's called prohistemi. It's the same word used with the elders in 1 Timothy chapter 5, verse 17. Notice, if you have the gift of leadership, now watch this, with zeal, wholeheartedly, give it your all. That's what often is needed in a church. Someone with the spiritual gift to lead, but they do it with eagerness, wholeheartedness. So I have learned nothing changes in a church unless there are those people who can lead in the Robert Chapman way, because people give leadership and they divide the whole church. We don't want that kind of leadership. We want Christian leadership, servant leadership, humble leadership, loving leadership, brotherly leadership. That's the only kind of leadership we want. So without a person with some gift of leading, really very, very little changes in a church. And very often you hear a church say, we know that's wrong. We know that's not scriptural, but just the way we've always done it. and nothing ever happens. Maybe you've heard that one too. Now you're dealing with the subject of deacons and trustees. Since I know it's your desire to be a New Testament kind of church, why don't you stick with New Testament vocabulary and New Testament instructions? There's nothing about a group of people called trustees, unless they're the elders. Turn to Titus chapter 1. Titus chapter 1. Titus chapter 1, verse 7. For an overseer, now look at this, very interesting, as God's steward. An overseer as God's steward must be above reproach. Now, a steward literally is household manager, estate manager. That's actually what the Greek word means. This particular duty demands two things: faithfulness and competency. A steward may be a slave to a master, but he's over other people. He may, like Joseph in Potiphar's house, he was a steward over everything Potiphar had. An overseer, an elder, is a steward. God's steward, not the church's steward, God's steward. God's household manager, the estate manager. Now that's as close as you'll get to trustees. As close as you'll get to the term trustees. Now, in our church, many, many years ago, we eliminated the trustees. Just another more committees you get, or the more people on a high level of leadership, you have conflict. So every year at our yearly meeting, which is according to our state law, we have to have a meeting of the corporation. We elect our elders. We read this verse to them. We say the closest you can get to trustees. We have to have trustees for the organization who the government sees as a representative. We just elect our deacons. Our elders, rather than add another committee or another leadership position. Now, I do not know New Jersey law, but in many states, the trustees are actually the legal heads or the legal entity of the corporation before the government. So, two illustrations, but one I know very, very well and was involved with. So in one particular assembly, been there 4 or 5 times, the trustees got fed up with the elders because one elder, not all the elders, one elder was post-tribulational. They just got rid of him. They told him, you leave the church, we don't even want you here. You have no legal authority, and they threw them all out. They started another assembly. That lasted for about 8 years. And just this year, both assemblies came back together again. So that was nice. But the only legal entity was the trustees. And this happened again. It's happened in churches. So do not put yourself in that kind of danger. You say, well, that won't happen here. Well, it may happen in 10 years from now. I don't know. All I know is that if you speak of trustees, the elders are it. So we don't have trustees. We have elders and we have deacons. Now, making changes like this, if you believe this, is not easy. When people have positions of authority, they have control, they don't give it up very easily. And I would like to remind you, 40 or 50 years ago, I remember very, very well, the basic arguments when assemblies wanted to get elders. Because when I came into the assemblies from the Presbyterian Church, which is run by elders, that's another long story of incompetence, disorganization, unbiblical elders. I never heard of elders and deacons. I never even heard the term. In our assembly in Elizabeth, New Jersey, we had the brothers meeting. I went to the brothers meeting as a teenager, and the brothers meeting, we made all our decisions. Speakers, who's going to put out the Lord's Supper, who's going to clean the building. But it was basically an administrative committee. It was not a committee to deal with the souls of people, Hebrews 13, 17. We didn't deal with pastoral issues. It was mainly administrative matters. And we did it as a group of men. So it was a male-led congregational type of rule. I remember that Bill McDonald, Gene Gibson, Mark Porter, and a group of men started going all over the United States with the shepherd. Do you remember it, Peter? Do you remember? Yeah. And as a result of that, more and more assemblies, because I know this was a big debate in Denver. Most of the assemblies did not want elders. They say we don't need that as too churchy, and we're doing just fine the way we are. Why do we need that? Well, they came to Denver, and all the assemblies showed up, and they gave their talk about elders. And I think it was really a movement of the Spirit of God. Even the assemblies that were opposed to elders said, well, I think people like Bill McDonald and Gene Gibson had such authority. All the assemblies went to elders, but our assembly had gone to elders years before. Our assembly in Littleton, Colorado, was literally created out of this doctrine. And that's why I wrote the book, Biblical Eldership, because there was massive confusion about this. Do we even need elders? What is an elder? What do they do? Are they formally recognized? Are they tested? So there was massive confusion, and that's one of the motivations for me writing it. Well, anyway, our assembly was created out of the debate over elders. And our original elders, all of whom are dead today and stayed in the assemblies in their entire life, our assembly was started by 3 elders. And they wanted recognized, qualified, functioning elders. And when I came to Littleton Bible Chapel in 1968, I saw a real body of elders pastoring, shepherding, caring for, taking the job really seriously. They were dead serious. It's interesting that the Lord put me right in that assembly, and not knowing I would write the book on biblical eldership, and I got it acted right in front of me by some men who, all of them had regular jobs. We never had a full-time worker until almost 19 years of our history before the assembly got so big we needed someone full-time. And I was their first full-time worker. Changing a church is not easy. But if we're committed to biblical principles, why not have elders and deacons? It's taught in the scriptures. And why not use biblical terminology? There's a reason the Lord chooses these certain terms. They fit the nature of the church, and it promotes the nature of the Christian church. We don't need priests. We don't need clerics. We need elders. People who meet God's qualifications, and we need deacons. So I would say just eliminate the trustees, and then you need this group called deacons. Now I'm going to go into some procedures here, so don't get scared. The deacons, let's get rid of the word deacon. It's just a transliteration. Literally, it just is an empty word that people fill in their own meaning. If we translated assistants, we know immediately what they do. They assist the elders. Now, the church in Ephesus was probably a large church. We know it was a church that had finances. It wasn't a poor church. Look in the book of Acts. And it was an epicenter. It's one of the great epicenters of Christianity. You have Jerusalem, Antioch, Ephesus, and Rome. So it was really one of the most significant churches in the first century, and Paul was 3 years there. And from Ephesus, we know from Acts 20, he sent these delegates out to different places that he personally supported. Amazing man, amazing man. Supported himself and supported these workers. Talk about expanding the gospel. So in Ephesus, you had a larger church, and the elders would have much work in teaching, caring for the flock, dealing with almost innumerable problems. There's always problems. If you don't think there's problems, look at Moses and the children of Israel. That poor man, what a beating. Church work is not easy. You get a lot of criticism. You do a lot of things for people that later get mad at you and walk out. Well, anyway, the assistants are there to relieve the elders of the numerous details that you have in caring for people, and I have a list. We should go through that list of what deacons would do to focus the elders on the ministry of the word and prayer. Acts 6:4, you ought to memorize that. But we will devote ourselves, very strong word, we will devote ourselves to prayer and the ministry of the word. You have Bible studies, you have discipleship studies, you have the Sunday morning preaching, you have Sunday school classes. Elders need to be involved in what Sunday school material. No one should be teaching in the church that the elders haven't approved of. No material should be used in the church, because this is the elders' ultimate job, is the ministry of the word, to protect the flock. There's false teaching all around us. In fact, false teaching is exploding in America, exploding. The elder's job is it's a protective job, a guardianship, the overseers, watcher-overs, the flock from so much crazy teaching today. You get it on television, you get it on radio, you get it in books, coming at us from all different directions. The deacons or the assistants relieve the elders to concentrate on their basic jobs, which already is a horrendous job, caring for the flock, so many needs. Now, what if you're a house church or a small church? Well, if you may not need deacons. The elders can handle that. Wouldn't even need someone full-time. But there's scripture for that if you need that, 1 Timothy 5:17 and 18. So I would say deacons are related to need. When the elders feel they need more assistance by officials who will deal with vulnerable people, finances that demand certain qualifications to protect the church. The qualifications are to protect the church and to make sure the wrong people don't get in these positions of authority. The problem often with trustees and things like that, you don't have to meet the biblical qualifications. Very often the wrong people get in these positions. But again, it's a sacred trust of the people, caring for the flock of God. Now, how would you move from a trusteeship to a deaconship? Let me give you some ways this can be done. Or any change. It's not only this, it could be something else. You may not have elders, and you may want to establish elders. How would you do that? Well, first of all, you have to start with a recognized leadership body, or you'll have chaos, whether they're called elders or deacons or the brothers meeting or whatever, or you may want to call them the trustees. You start with what you have. There is in every church some kind of leadership structure or body. You start with them. And it starts with teaching the believers what the scripture says. Because if people aren't convinced from scripture, they're not going to do anything. They don't see any need for doing anything, because we're all basically lazy. We're all spiritually lazy. You're looking at a very lazy spiritual person. After Adam and Eve sinned, they were spiritually lazy. Do you ever notice how easy it is to spend 3 hours watching a football game? You ever know? Or watching a movie, or maybe 2 movies on a Friday night? Boom, time goes just like that, right? Reading a nice novel. Try to read the Bible for an hour. Oh, my neck. Oh, my eyes. Oh, they're bleeding. Oh, my back, Try to do an hour in prayer. Well, forget that. Let's go to 10 minutes. Isn't it interesting how spiritual things are so difficult, but these other things just take up our time so easily? America is literally amusing itself to death. We have more amusements and distractions than any time in human history. That's what sociologists say. I'm not saying that. We are spiritually lazy. And anything is easier than prayer. Come on, admit it. I wouldn't believe you didn't admit it. It takes self-discipline and a conscientious effort to read and study the Bible, God's book. It's a big book, by the way. Look at the size of it. And you're to master this book. It takes a lifetime to know it well. And it takes effort and discipline and saying no to many, many distractions. This is the age of distractions. And it's more and more difficult to find godly elders and deacons because our society is sinking into sin and the worst wickedness that's even imaginable to the days of Sodom and Gomorrah, it's going to be harder and harder to find people qualified to even serve as elders and deacons. Reminds me of a country in Europe, missionary known to all of you here, said to me one day, we can't find elders. We cannot find men who are qualified because all their lives have been ruined by sin, alcoholism, multiple marriages, unfaithfulness, wild and out of control children. So there are none. There are no recognized men here that we could put in this position because they do not qualify. We can't do that. That's happening in America right now. We're not the country we were 50 years ago. I think I'm remembering this correctly, but when I came to our assembly in Elizabeth, from everything I can remember, the knowledge those men had, and one of them, by the way, was Mr. Brown, who I think some of you may know. They knew their Bibles, and you could quote any verse in the New Testament, any verse, and they would get within a verse or two. Of course, they'd have their Schofield Bibles, and they had read it so much that now it's in the upper right-hand corner here. I think it's verse 10. Oh, it's verse 11. I'm sorry. I failed again. Today, we're suffering from almost complete biblical illiteracy. Wheaton College, other Christian colleges do a test when the students come in. These children are raised in Christian homes, evangelical homes. And their knowledge of the basic stories of the Bible is abysmal. It's been in Christianity Today and other magazines. These young people seem to know nothing. They're in Christian homes. Now they know secularism. They know the newest movie, the newest restaurant. But the story, they couldn't even put in order Moses, David, Daniel, Jesus, Paul. Couldn't even put them in order. What comes first? It's going to be harder and harder to find qualified people. So how do you change a church? Not an easy thing to do, but we have to start with the leadership body, whatever it is. Hopefully it's a godly leadership body that wants to follow the scriptures and wants to be correct in its church governance. Now, there's several ways this can be done. There's not just one way. When you appoint the first set of deacons, or in some churches, the first set of the elders, and I've known numbers of churches that have called me, setting down their first elders. Of course, once they get elders, they can start perpetuating themselves. How do you start? Well, if you have a godly leadership body, a group of elders, they could start the process by saying, we have 2 men or 3 men in view here that we think meet these qualifications, and we'll have to ask them, do they have a desire for this? They have to have some desire, or they're not going to do it. They can meet with those men. They can say, here's what we would expect out of you. I'm going to give you a list in just a moment. Would you want to assist us and work closely with us? See, the deacons work very, very closely with the elders. In fact, I see no reason why the deacons can't go to the elders meeting. We invite them all the time. If there's private things, we just ask them to leave. We always have an elder in the deacons meeting, and deacons can have a deacon with us anytime. We share our notes together, our minutes together. You can start that way. The elders pick 2, 3 men, probably don't need more than that, and talk to them. And then, now don't miss this point, 1 Timothy 3:10, you know it now. 1 Timothy 3:10, let them be examined first. Then let them serve if they prove blameless. So, with all our elders, all our deacons, we present them to the congregation. And here's how we do that. We hand a survey out. They have 2 weeks to answer this survey, and the survey lists all the qualifications for a deacon or an elder with some explanation of who they are. And so we want the participation of the congregation. It's not a vote, one person, one vote. It's a participation in this decision, because the text does not say Timothy do it. It's left in a general sense. So we include the congregation in examining the elder or deacon according to the qualifications. It's not a popularity candidate. I don't really like that person. He doesn't use my kind of Bible. It's not that. You have to give biblical reasons why a person qualifies or does not qualify. Or you could do something like Acts 6 and start by putting a survey out to the congregation and say, pick 2 people in this congregation, 2 men who you think would qualify as deacons. You could start that way. Let the congregation, that's what you see in Acts chapter 6. I don't think there's any mechanical order that the Bible gives on this, any kind of orderly manner. The point is examination as to meeting the biblical qualifications. Because you see, the qualifications tells us the kind of person God wants to shepherd his church and lead his church. The church is not just a club down the street. It's a special body of people, God's church, that has to have a certain kind of leader. And notice that you don't have to be charismatic leader. You need, in personality, you need people of godly character and know their Bibles. So you could start with the congregation responding to you with a survey. You could even have a congregational meeting and explain to them what you want, that we as elders want to have a closer assistance who will assist us and help us. So 1 Timothy 3:10, you have the public examination. After you've had an examination, you've talked to the person in question, you've asked him about their doctrine because he has to live according to the mystery of the faith. In other words, it means you have a consistent life according to the truths of the gospel. That's what it means. This means that. Mystery of the faith, in other words, talking about the gospel. Christian doctrine. Is their life consistent with our beliefs? If not, they don't qualify. So you can use several methods to test this and to have the congregation participate with you, but you first, as a group of elders, will ask the questions. You'll meet with that person, and you'll ask lifestyle questions because they might live in a way that's not in agreement with the gospel. We had that exact thing happen with us. A very, very fine man brought forth as a deacon to help us, and everyone in the congregation, all the elders, wanted this person as a deacon, right? One person objected, and we could not take him as a deacon. You know why? He had a biblical objection. He was the manager of a bookstore that had an entire section devoted to the Satanic Bible and all kinds of bizarre, demonic literature like Stephen King books. We didn't know that. And one brother said, do you know what they're selling in that store? And he's the manager of it. They're the big salesperson for this kind of literature. We had no idea. Well, when we were told that, didn't matter that 99.9% of the congregation wanted him as a deacon. He didn't qualify. It's not a matter of getting up all the votes you can. And when we heard that, we went to the store and examined it ourselves. I remember going there with one of the other brothers. I said, wow, this is terrible. So we told them, you cannot serve here as a deacon. Well, he got real mad at us. And he wrote John MacArthur and he wrote Chuck Swindoll. And guess what they said? You don't qualify. That's simple. Now, he was very mad at us at first. After a couple of months, he came and apologized. He said, you know, I hadn't thought of it myself as inconsistent with the faith. He was not living consistent with the faith. In fact, it was mockery to our church. One of your deacons, he's selling all these kinds of books, Antichrist books. So there's a public testing, and then there has to be public recognition. This is an office in the church. Both elders and deacons need to be publicly recognized. Many different ways to do that. Bring them up in front of the congregation. There's a point at which a person becomes a deacon and a point a person becomes an elder. It's not, you know, he's an elder. I don't know if he's an elder. Maybe he's an elder. We don't know. That was the old theory, you know. The church will know who the elders are. We don't ever say the term elder. And I can tell you from personal experience that very often the wrong people become the leaders of the church. Someone's going to push themselves forward. But if there's qualifications in an office, you've got to meet that. And if you don't reach that, it protects the assembly from bullies, from dominating personalities who will push themselves forward. And that's exactly how our assembly was created, because there were bullies in the mother assembly that wouldn't listen to anyone. And it just became too much for the assembly. And if you said anything, well, we don't have any recognized people here with taking these titles. So there needs to be public recognition of the person. You can do the laying on of hands, you can do prayer, bring the person up, but don't make it a hidden thing. I dislike backroom elderships. You know, the elders are making they're like a secret club. They make these decisions. Any big decision must be brought to the congregation, and the congregation pray with you. So if you're going to build a new building, you're going to make a change in your doctrine, that should never be done in a back room by a group of people called elders. The elders take the lead in that, but it must be brought to the congregation, just like we saw in Philippians. Paul always speaks to the congregation. The congregation must own these decisions. And if you're making a big financial decision, they better own it, because they don't have to give to you, by the way. All right, there's different ways you can do this. Those are some general ways. Make it public, people involved, examining the person's character. Does it match what God says he wants for his leaders? Now, you've got a piece of paper in front of you. And let me just quickly go down this, and maybe we can have 5 minutes for questions, so I'm answering your questions. Responsibility for all deacons, weekly phone calls to needy people. If you're a leader among God's people, you're going to make a lot of phone calls. I've made a lot of phone calls today. We have a big problem in our assembly right now. We're dealing with it. I'm not an elder, but they're calling me about different things and advice and that. I haven't been an elder for 13 years. We have a wonderful group of elders. But phone calls are part of the job, checking on people. So we got a couple, they only found out a month and a half ago. He's got 3 weeks to live. He's got cancer all through him. He didn't even know it. So I've been calling every day, this dear sister, because any day now, the man is going to die. And then we had a man die of COVID this week. I've been trying to get a hold of his wife, and I can't get a hold of her. But I'm not just doing that. Deacons are doing it, elders are doing it, to make sure we're on top of this and not let things go by. Daily prayer for our church and our people. We've really encouraged both the elders and deacons. Take our church directory every day, one family, children too, children are people, know their names, pray for the family. Sunday morning, you see them, Peter, you go up to them, hey, kids, I was praying for you this week. And they look like, what did we do wrong? You didn't do anything wrong. We're just praying for you. You know what? They'll never forget that. All right, pre and post hospital and operation visits. When people are going through crisis, they want to know people are praying, just like you were doing tonight. You're doing tonight. They also need phone calls, and in many cases, they need to have a visit. Now, some people don't want to visit. That's fine. You just don't do that. But there are people, they want someone there before they're scared for the operation. It really comforts them. Knowing and making decisions about church finances. We give a lot of that work to the deacons. They handle our, do you know in our assembly, no elder since the very beginning of our church has ever looked at the checks, taken the offering. I've never seen a check in all my years at LBC. The deacons handle that, and we don't want to know. That way, when we look out at the audience, and I remember when the deacon said to us, don't think you can guess where this money came from. And I think he's right. You just never know. So one case I do know, because she told me, we had this lady from Ireland, and all her life, she was a maid, all her life. And she died in her high 90s. And Marilyn and I had a legal guardianship over her because she had no family. And she's coming close to the end of her life. And she says to me, you know, you're doing this big addition to the assembly. I want to buy all the pews. I want you to buy an organ. I'm sitting there going, what are you talking about? This lady never spent a dime and put her money in mutual funds. And she had a lot of money. And she gave a lot of it to our missionaries. And basically the whole interior of our new building, she paid for. So you don't know. That's why as elders, we don't want to know. That way you look at everyone the same. So how much do you give, Peter? Okay, I'm just joking. Okay, Sunday mornings be at the church 8:40. Oh, there's nothing worse than invisible elders and deacons. Can't stand it. Invisible elders and deacons. You say, well, who are the elders here? Well, I know one, but I don't know who the rest are. If you're a leader, you have to be present and you have to be visible. I call it circulate and percolate. Sunday morning, I am circulating and percolating. I pick up all the old widows and shake them around. They love it. No, I don't do that. I break their backs. But make sure you get around to all the widows, give them a kiss, give them a hug, and there's people suffering, so you're moving around. You don't go sit in the seat with your coffee and donut. Elder and deacon doesn't do that. They're out, they're working, they're being with the people, showing love. They create warmth, they create joy and togetherness by being very friendly, being at the front door. When the congregation is done in the morning, every elder is at that door. They have to go through all of us. Very interesting how at that door, as people are leaving, they will tell you something, share with you a real problem. Like, my husband hasn't worked in weeks. We've been fighting or having real problems with our children. They will, for some reason, they go out that door. They want to tell you. So if you have all the elders there, you can come aside with that person and the other elders are there. Connecting with new people in the church. Who are they? Let them know who you are. All right. Special responsibilities. 2 deacons over the building. They may never lift a hammer. They don't have to. We got plenty of construction people. They're over the building. They see that things get done. And they have to, of course, know what the elders ultimately want for the building. But basically, they're in charge. A deacon acting as a treasurer. Although a number of people are involved in the finances, there's one responsible. And then every year, the deacons and the elders put the budget together and present it to the congregation. They have 2 weeks to respond to us. Deacon over security, big thing today, very big thing. People will not come to church if there's not security. And we've had a killing already in Colorado. And maybe you remember the story of New Life Church. A man came in, he already killed someone in one church. He came into New Life Church fully armed with a machine gun and pistols. He was out to do great damage. A lady police officer killed him before he got in. So people want security today because of the world we live in. One deacon over the senior ministry with widows and the elderly. You know, one of the big ministries of the future is the elderly. The whole world is graying. Those baby boomers, they're getting old. They got gray hair and everything. That's going to be the real ministry of the future, senior ministry. And that's a great ministry for the deacons to be over. Meals, again, the sisters work with this. A whole group of people work with this, but we have meals in the refrigerator, the freezer, ready to go at any time. Like for this sister who's losing her husband, other sister who lost a husband. A deacon facilitate the deacons, the meetings. Then meetings. Deacons welcome to all the elders meetings. Deacons meet once a month together. And in the other week, they have a 15-minute stand-up meeting, mainly so that they check on one another. Did you make your calls? Did you make your visit? Did you do what you're supposed to do? One reason for a plurality of leaders is that they hold one another accountable, because we are lazy and we forget and we're busy. But if you have your team, you go, you were supposed to make that call, and it embarrasses you. You go, oh, I better make my calls. So anyway, those are some of the things that deacons do. Now, let me tell you the whole secret to the whole thing. Are you ready? All right, listen carefully. The deacons will never flourish or do what they're supposed to do if the elders don't give them real direction. I've been to many, many churches, and many deacons will say to you, even elders will say to you, I actually don't know what I'm supposed to do. I mean, I do different things, but I'm not clear on what I'm supposed to do. The elders must very clearly tell the deacons, this is where we need your help. And then every one of them gets a job description. So among our elders, every elder has a job description, and he puts down the number of hours he thinks he can give the assembly in a week. And January of every year, the elders go through with each, an eldership is a self-managed group. There has to be some way to evaluate how you're doing, or else you just, again, we tend to randomness. We tend to not follow through with our responsibilities. That's the normal way. So when you have a job description and you know you're going to answer to your brothers, and you can sharpen it, change it each year, and a brother might say, I don't have as much time as last year. Okay, we all know that. You don't have to walk around in guilt. We all know what's going on. So The deacons must get guidance from the elders, and there's got to be some accountability. That's why we have shared leadership. We hold one another accountable because we know what we're like if there's no accountability. We go to randomness, minimalism. That's why coaches know if people run together, they'll do better than if they run alone. You push each other. Well, the accountability of the eldership and the deaconship, you know that you have to face your brothers, and if you didn't come through with your job. So that's it. Do you have a question that is burning your hands?
We actually, some people submitted questions.
Do you want to do a question or two for the next 5 minutes?
I'll rephrase this one. Do you think that Acts chapter 6, where the brethren were appointed to assist with the ministry to the widows, is that talking about deacons?
Okay, it's Acts, I'll repeat it for here. It was Acts chapter 6, the first deacons. Well, we're never told that. Luke could have told us. He calls them later one of the 7, calls him one of the 7. And Paul makes no connection with them. I would say this, they're a prototype of what kinds of things the deacons would do. But deacons are assistants to the elders. So it's not exactly the same, but at the same time, it's a good example of the very kind of things elders would need assistance. I think Acts 6:4 is applicable to every eldership, but we must devote ourselves, which is the idea of single-mindedness, to prayer. Incidentally, the elders getting together to pray, major part of their work. We need to believe that. We want to be praying elders and the ministry of the word. And it doesn't just simply the platform ministry. There's discipleship, there's small groups and house groups, and there's Sunday school, there's teen teaching. So they're teaching on every level.
Can't the naming of several brothers as official deacons cause others who are not so designated feel slighted?
Well, sure, you have the, will if you appoint some people as deacons, will others be slighted and have their feelings hurt? Well, you have the same thing with elders. You appoint some people as elders, and I'll tell you, one of the hardest things to do is say no to a brother who wants to be an elder. And as a group of elders, you have to say no. And that really hurts. In fact, I just think of a couple that left our church over that, but they've come back and they realize they've got to accept this from the Lord. So whatever you do like that, someone's going to be hurt. But we have to operate on biblical principles. Yeah.
Should the wife of a deacon be expected to be as committed to the assembly as we expect the wife of an elder to be?
You know, that question has to be answered by seasons of life. If you're a wife and you have little children like back there, no, your first responsibility is to those children. And we expect nothing out of that wife as far as service to the assembly. Now, if she has time and she's an energetic person, she can do that. So we don't want to put false guilt on a mother. Now, if all your children are at the home, it would certainly make sense that you're with your husband in the ministry of caring for the church. My wife's an enormous help to me. She's always making phone calls. We'll talk and I'll say, would you do some phone calls? She's always writing letters and notes. Oh, I don't know what. So we're partners in this together. And she'll even call me like tomorrow and say, you have some phone calls? I'll say, yeah, why don't you do these couple of phone calls? So she's a very big help. And of course, a wonderful example to the other ladies. Yes.
One more on this list. Wouldn't you say the deacon should only be appointed if there is quite a large practical work that the elders are unable to accomplish without naming deacons?
Sure, you could do whatever you want as far as, achieving the goals of getting this work done. But why wouldn't you follow the biblical terminology and the biblical pattern? Why circumvent that? Again, we come back to what we're comfortable with. All churches, this church here and our church, every church, you have ways you do things and you're comfortable. But then when you're confronted with, we could be more biblical on this, then do it. In fact, that's probably my message to you. If this is a biblical teaching and it's the order for the household of God, 1 Timothy 5, 14 and 15, why would you not do it? You can always come up with excuses. And like I said, you can go back to the early days when the assembly started appointing recognized, qualified, functioning elders. There were all kinds of excuses why we didn't need that. Only problem is it wasn't biblical. So, and we pride ourselves on being a New Testament church. So, well, you can ask me and talk to me privately. And let's close in prayer. Lord, I think of this congregation, help them with their own changes and their own progress and their own spiritual health. Pray that you will work mightily in this assembly and that it will be led by godly men and be led according to scriptural patterns and the instructions of our great apostle that you have given us as our teacher. We ask these things in the powerful name of the Lord Jesus Christ. Amen.